Oh, hi, Celia. Thanks for clicking on. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about mindfulness in this episode. And mindfulness has a lot of energy around it these days. It became a thing. And once something becomes a thing, then it gets a lot of energy on it. People project what they think it means and what they want it to mean and what they don't want it to mean and what it means about what they're not doing already. And so there's just a lot of, whew, yeah, a lot of energy. It's everything that is. We destroy and uncreate at all times a godzillion. Woof, woof, woof. Yeah, 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 yeah. All right. So, so I have another word for it instead of mindfulness, which is participating in your own thoughts and in your own life. So during the course of a day, we make something like, I don't know, 50,000 choices in a day. And most of those choices we make on autopilot. And that autopilot is made up of habit, but it's also another degree away from consciousness, which is it's the habit of matching other people. And what do I mean by that? I mean that the world that we live in right now, it hasn't always been this way, but it has been for 20 years at least. Yeah, more than that. But the world that we live in right now is mimicry is supposed to be knowledge. And that means that when you go to school, you don't have to learn how to think. You just have to learn how to answer their questions, right? And uh, for various reasons, I took a GED in 1973, and I lacked like 2 credits to graduate from high school, and I was so glad that I did that because although it was a mind-numbingly boring afternoon, it was tragically not hard. And all I had to do was read a paragraph and then answer a question, which was just a rearrangement of the same words. And I was dumbfounded that's what um, had come to symbolize education, because that's not learning something, that's repeating it, that's mimicry, that's just copying somebody. So that's a pretty glaring example. But when I worked in um, the federal government, it was the same thing. All I had to do was paraphrase what I'd already heard, and they took that as me knowing what I was talking about. And I took it as me knowing what I was talking about until I realized, oh my God, I have what's that thing that you get where you feel like you're a fraud? Imposter syndrome, because I am an imposter. I have no idea what I'm doing or saying here. Not because I know what I'm doing or saying, but I don't have confidence in myself. I didn't have confidence in myself because I knew I didn't know. Right? So the way that the world is operating right now, you may know that you don't know what they tell you that you should know or that you do know, because you may know that you're just mimicking and copying stuff. And your whole system will tell you that that's not the same thing as knowing. Right. So when that is going on, and this can be very challenging. I mean, if they're throwing a lot of money at you and paying you really well, and you know that you don't know what you're doing, that sets up a really uncomfortable disconnect. There's another word for it, but I can't think of it right now, where what's being required of you and what where things are not meeting up, right? And so you know that you're kind of mimicking or copying or play acting or some variation of that. And yet they're paying you a bunch of money. And then you're confronted with, well, either I can believe in the system, in which case I'm a fraud, or I can believe in me, in which case the system is stupid. I recommend you believe in you, although the system will want you to believe in it. So this has taken a very interesting turn for talking about mindfulness. But this is the kind of stuff that gets in the way of your being mindful. It's the discordant stuff. It's the resonant, the dissonance. It's the disconnect. And so a lot of times what we choose is to just be on autopilot and not think about it and not not really own that the world is crazy. But here's the thing, you're not a child anymore. You can see that the world is crazy, and you can stop matching it, and you can start knowing what's true for you and operating from that, and choosing at some points to speak from that. Not all points, because you want to do what's going to actually create greater. And sometimes creating greater is just agreeing with the stupids. And sometimes creating greater is raising a ruckus and yelling and hollering and screaming. So you want to be in every moment so that you can tell, okay, so what's going to create greater in this moment? Being quiet or speaking up? What's going to create greater in this moment? Yelling or whispering? So the more, this is the kind of participating in your own life that I'm talking about, is how to be present with this moment. I take a lot of Lyft. I use Lyft. I don't drive anymore just because it's too much traffic. And every time you get on a Lyft, you have a different driver. So this morning I went someplace for breakfast, and the guy who was driving doesn't know my area of town at all. So I had to kind of tell him where to go, because the app, the GPS that Lyft uses now, is on Amazon, which means they literally had the driver go around the block and then get back on the same road we were on for no reason. This is a neighborhood. There was no traffic. There was no provocation to make the car go around the block. Obviously that pissed me off, but I was telling the driver how to get where we were going, and we were having a lovely conversation. And then I had breakfast, and then I took a lift back home, and I was kindly telling the driver, how the tricks of the roads that we were on. And then it dawned on me to ask him, "Oh, so are you familiar with this part of town?" He's like, "Yes, I'm very familiar with this part of town." And so I apologized for being so helpful and stopped. And I noticed a couple of things. One is, this is very lifelike, and this is very much about the whole point for why we need to be mindful and to be aware in every moment, because life is like, taking lifts everywhere. You never know who your driver is going to be. You never know, is this going to be a situation where you need to explain a lot? Or is this a situation where you don't need to explain anything? Is this a situation where you need to pay attention to the turns that the driver is making? Or is this the kind of situation where you can allow the driver just to be the paid professional that he is and take you where you're going? And you can only know that if you're in the moment, right? And it also had a great lesson about being helpful, but we'll save that for another day. All right. So thanks so much for checking in, and just notice what's going on in your life, and notice in this moment what's going on. Who am I talking to? Who am I being in my head? Am I copying somebody? Am I doing this the way I would want to do this, or am I doing this the way somebody else wants me to do this? So just be present, and you don't have to be militant about it. If you've been operating on autopilot for years, especially if you've been successful at it, right? Then you're not going to be very motivated to try something new. But if you're looking at this video, it's probably because some things are not kind of working as well as they used to. And so just allow yourself to be more curious about what's going on in this moment. And the more you are curious, the more you're going to discover that this moment has more power and potency and information that you actually need to navigate your life than you had previously thought. So just play with being present and being curious and what's going on for me now, and resist the programming to beat yourself up, and just be curious and see what happens. All right. Until next time. Thanks.